Hi, it's Mary Jane Brixa from Lioness Publications. Sorry for the mask. I'm having some issues with allergies today. That's causing a lot of sneezing and coughing. But I did want to get this one video out, and hopefully it might be better tomorrow. My allergies, that is. And what I want to do is I want to go back over and discuss the Trump timeline that I did for March. I did that on March 8th. So I want to go back and note certain times in that video, and we'll look at what's happening now. And these are things that I said would be happening or things that I identified and how it's actually turning out. So first thing I said for around that video was done on the 8th. Now, on the 5th, I noted that Saturn was going to be squaring Trump's moon. And what that meant was that he would be detached, very cold. And around that time, that's when we had some of the issues with Ukraine coming up. So, in effect, he was shutting off aid to countries. He was also involved in the Gaza, no compassion whatsoever for the Gaza people. We had layoffs going on through the federal government and still are. But all of these were handled very coldly, very transactional. There was no emotion whatsoever. And that still somewhat continues, but we'll probably see a little less of that. The next thing, when I was actually doing the video, we had the Wounded Warrior, which I call, and that was actually moving into his ninth house. Ninth house is international affairs. It's also legal system. When we look at the court, something like Supreme Court. And I noted at that time that there were going to be international issues cropping up, possibly issues, legal system. And that's what eventually was happening. A lot of issues are coming up with the legal system. Specifically, Trump is trying to tap down on the educational system. That's also something I noted. And by the way, in that other tape, in that other video, it's at the 3-minute, 20-second time point, if you want to go back and check. And for the Saturn square moon, that was at 1 minute, 40 seconds. Now, he's also, this Wounded Warrior moving into the ninth, he's actually having a lot of his issues coming out in his dealings. In his dealing with the legal system, in his dealings with the international community. So this is in effect his revenge coming through. And it's affecting the educational system. So things he doesn't like, things he felt did him wrong, are actually coming up. And that was right around the 8th of the month. Next thing I mentioned at the 5-minute period that Uranus was going to be conjuncting his 10th. And that happened before last spring. And it happens again. And it means it's going to be in his 10th house for a while. But what starts to happen is that it changes his status. And that's exactly what started happening. He started to have his approval start to drop. Why? Because of things like Dodge. That was worrying to people. Musk. Now, he's also at that point was sticking up for them, which means that's another concern. So let's take a look at the next one, and that was Saturn actually conjuncting the 8th house. Now, in this case, I was talking about that at the 7-minute, 30-second mark. And in this case, I was noting that he could start to lose some of his vitality, his energy. Also, he might start to lose his support. So again, this is something where right around that time frame, we start to have the deportations of illegal immigrants without any due process. So this is a big issue. So he's losing support from people because of that. And I noted that there was going to be a loss of support. And in effect, likely that's coming from is the deportation without due process. Next thing, we look at the 620 period. And at that time, we were talking about the Saturn squaring his sun. Now, that also is sapping his vitality. So he may be, in effect, sort of slightly less robust, more, not confused, but just sort of not as divisive on some things. And what was happening with that is, at that time, you saw him going after judges. We saw him going after Social Security. Um, so what's happening there is he's sort of reacting against things. It's just sort of the environment. And that's because he feels like he's restricted, and he is. And lastly, and this is a big one, on the 25th, I said he was going to have Neptune in inconjunct angle with his ascendant. Now, I talk about that in the video on 7 minutes, 42 seconds. And I talked about how his health could be affected by this. He doesn't have any control over what's going to happen here. And this is an important point because what happens is that, I was concerned with his health, but also Neptune hitting his ascendant in that fashion means that he's not in control. And that shows in what was happening. So the things we have happening is we had soldiers going missing, and Trump didn't know that they were missing. People are not informing him. We had the signal gate. And what happened there is people were doing things that Trump didn't know about. So he doesn't have a finger on what's going on. Or more importantly, people are not letting him know what's going on. That's a big indication. And that's something that I noted back at the beginning of March would be happening. So I don't really need to talk about Signalgate because I already said things like that would be happening. Because Trump doesn't have a finger of control over the administration. There are likely people doing what they want. And this is where it's starting to show up. Now, the next month is going to also have some very important points. And I'm going to be covering that a little later, but I want to keep this video as short as possible, just to show what happened in March and what I said would be happening and how they correspond. Sorry about that. That's my dog talking. Otherwise, have a great day. Bye now.